Hello, everyone. Welcome once again. So, I know everyone has been following social media, and perhaps you have seen this story. Now, this story has a lot of lessons that we can learn on friendship. Good morning, welcome. Well, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this blooming room. My name is Coach Chinyere, and we will digging into the Shanquella Brown situation and look at how look at her story and how it has so many lessons that we can learn and how we can use that as a learning process for life, for medicine, and also for choosing friendships. Okay, so let's look at the timeline of events. All right, now we look at what has happened so far, and then we can go from there. Yeah. Okay, so what has happened so far is that what has happened so far is, yeah, so here we go. So what has happened so far is, let me just make this bolder so you can see my screen. So on the 28th of October, she and a group of friends, 6 friends, would look at a slideshow of her friends so that we can all see it. So she and 6 of her friends went to Cabo, Mexico, like the Mexicans would call it. Cabo, Mexico, and for the English speakers is Mexico. On the 29th at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, there was a fight that was said to have ensued between Shanquella, well here we're going to call her Aquila, and her friends. And apparently the cops were called and the doctor was called as well. Then by 5 p.m. of the same night, Aquila was pronounced as lifeless. She was pronounced to have given up the ghost. Okay, so who is she? Just a recap of who Quila is. Shanquella Robinson was a 25-year-old Charlotte woman who Charlotte, that's North Carolina, United States of America, who mysteriously lost her life in Cabo during a Mexican trip with her friends. I put the friends in quote because I mean there's a lot to be said about the character of these friends, and it was the trip was said to have been to celebrate someone's birthday party. So who are these friends? If you look at the screen, a lot of interesting characters. Now, this is Winter Donovan, Alice Hyatt, Dhaejanie Jackson, Khalil Cook, Malik Dyer, and Naziz Wiggins. And this is our late, unfortunately late, Shanquella Robinson. So these are the 6 friends that she was said to have gone vacationing with. Okay, now what do we know so far? Now, according to Yahoo, because I had to look through several sites and I needed something very, very authentic because so much is going on social media. And one of the reasons I do not like to jump into stories when it comes out is because there's so many missing pieces of information. So it's actually much more beneficial to give it a little bit of time so that details can come in. And so when you give this information, it can be rich and it can be very informative, and there will not be a lot of hearsay. Now, the police reports indicate that at 2:13 p.m. on the 29th of October, medical help was summoned to Villa Linda 32, a property run by a company, Cabo Villa, located in San Jose del Cabo. Now, about an hour later, a doctor called Carolina Beatriz Ornelas Guterres of the American Medical Center, a local hospital around the area, because it's a tourist hot spot. So you have a lot of tourists houses that are being let up to tourists. So I am not surprised that they would want to make sure that there's a hospital that can cater to any sudden medical situations that come up. Okay, so this Dr. Carolina, I beg your pardon, arrived to treat Robinson because her friends, and subsequent reports had indicated that it was actually Winter that made the call. Okay, this is Winter here. All right, so it isn't clear, however, in the police report except who called for medical help. But later on, I did find out before coming on with this broadcast that it was Winter. But the reporting person is listed as, okay, yeah, as Winter Donovan of Greensboro. So Donovan is one of the 6 people, like I have said earlier. So the doctor reported that she believed that Robinson needed to be transferred to her hospital, but her friends insisted that she gets the medical treatment in the villa. So the doctor, looking at her condition, made the medical advice and the recommendation for her to be transported to a medical facility, but the friends, for whatever reason, insisted that she stay put and they don't take her to a hospital. So it was given IV. We're not quite sure what was given in the IV, but the information from the police also says that the doctor was there for close to an hour when Robinson began having a seizure, and the convulsions from the seizure lasted less than a minute, according to the report. Now, at this point, the patient's friend, that is Winter, called 911 to request an ambulance, according to the Observer's Spanish to English translation. This was about 4:20 p.m. This is 2 hours later. So at 2:13, the doctor arrived. At about 4:20, an ambulance was called, and the police was called, and an ambulance was sent over. So at this point, kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and also leave comments on further elaborations if there's anything you need clarity on in the comment section. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So in the meantime, the patient presented with difficulty breathing and a lowered pulse, and they had given her rescue breaths that had done CPR. The doctor, along with a friend, began administering CPR at about 4:49 when she went into respiratory distress. And when Gutierrez, who is a doctor, detected Robinson had stopped having a pulse. So police arrived, and then they talked to the doctor who was treating Robinson at about 5. This is about 3 hours from when she was called in to have a look at Robinson at Shanquella. So it's not clear from the information if the police report exactly what time an ambulance arrived from the 911 calls. But the report information indicates paramedics administered a total of 14 rounds of CPR, 5 doses of adrenaline, and 6 discharges as the shock that they put on the heart to try to reactivate it, but it was unsuccessful. So she was declared to have passed on at about 5:57 p.m. That's about 3 hours. A little above 3, shy of or plus or minus 3 hours when the doctor arrived on the scene. Now, the police report lists the cause of disease as cardiopulmonary arrest as for the reason. Now, Mexican authorities are investigating her passing as a possible femicide. Now, femicide is a situation where the passing away of a female, they look at it first as a femicide, that is a specific targeted attack against the person based on her gender, like because she's female. And then after that, if they have if it's inconclusive and all of that has been not has been disproved, then they can take it and to investigate it to be something else. Now, so this is what has happened. So however, now there are 2 videos before I step into this next slide. Now, there are 2 videos that have surfaced online, several videos. One was the one that was given by this guy here, Naziz Wiggins. He gave an interview. He gave a summary of events as he, in his own mind, as he saw it in Instagram, where he tried to explain himself and all of that. Now, Khalil here is a very interesting individual. Now, but I'll come to him later. Now, Dhaejanie, and one of the most popular videos that are circulating online, Dhaejanie was said to have been the one who was in a who physically assaulted Shanquella. And then the friends, especially the male friends, was saying, why aren't you fighting back? Fight back. That's this picture that you see up here. That was said to be Dhaejanie up there, and then Shanquella on the ground, and it was said to have been a nasty physical altercation. However, There was said to be, at the time that this incident happened, Shanquella was still said to be alive, still speaking, maybe brushed up a little bit. But Winter Donovan was said to be the one who had slam dunked Shanquella. She had held her by the throat and slammed her body on the ground. Now, it was after this attack by Winter that it was said that Shanquella deteriorated. And perhaps that's why she put that call through, because she was the one who last laid hands on her. And so she needed to make that call, perhaps. Now, what had happened was, when all of this incident happened, when they had seen, about 5:30 p.m., the doctor had pronounced that she had passed on. They all returned very quickly back to the US. According to the interview that Shanquella's father had given, he said they did not deposit her body in the mortuary before they all left her, and that when her health was deteriorating, they put a call through to the family. What they said was that it was due to alcohol of overdose. That she was reacting to excessive alcohol intake. That's what they told the family. So later on, when her health was going down, they told the parents that they needed $5,000 to get her medical help, and he was like, but she has insurance. And they were like, it cost a little bit more because it's Mexico, they can't take the insurance and all of that. So he said he actually sent above 6,000, close to 7,000 USD. Now, even with all that money, all of these people did not deposit that body, did not see to it that at least she was in a mortuary before they left. They all left her body and returned back to the States and went back to the US. All of them. Initially, when the medical report said she had passed on 15 minutes after the injuries was reported, but there has been contrary reports, because from what we have looked at the timeline, it says about 3 hours between when the doctor was called in and when she was pronounced to have passed on. But the medical report says 15 minutes. So there's a lot of disparity between what the police is saying and what the reports are saying and what the medical report is saying from the police. Yeah, and her father, Shanquella's father, had to put a call through to Mexico, try to find someone locally on the ground, the closest mortuary, to say, can you please take my daughter's body, can you please deposit it, the family will soon be over to pick up her body. He had to make arrangements for that process from the US. So the friends who were unfriendly when she was alive could not even respect her when she had passed, to at least make sure that her body was in a safe place before they abandoned her and ran back like scary cats back to the US. Khalil here is supposed to be her best friend of 10 years. Khalil is well known to the family and is said to have been on several holiday trips with the family. Be careful about those who dine and wine with you, who you allow into your inner circles. This guy was known to the family. He used to come over for holidays, wine and dine with the family, went on holiday trips with them, on family holidays with them. This same guy visited the house upon return and linked Dhaejanie's situation to alcoholism. 4 times, according to Shanquella's mother. 4 times he had visited the house, and he insisted on the alcohol story. It wasn't until the videos started to circulate on social media disputing the facts, because he said there was no fights whatsoever, that it was linked to alcohol. It was up until the videos started to circulate online, he stopped coming, because he knew he had been caught. He knew that his lies had been picked up. So where are we presently? 3 people are under investigation. Dr. Katerina, who had treated her, Shanquella, that's the doctor, the police who responded to the 911 call in the villa, and the minister in charge of the province. My question is, who and how could they not seize their passports and make sure that they did not leave town until they had a satisfactory response as to what had happened? How did they let all those people leave Mexico? How? So the minister in charge of the province is also being looked into. Now, what is an atlas luxation? Because this is what was said to have been the cause of death, cause of her passing. Now, it might sound similar to a dislocation, because we have something in medical practice what we call a dislocation and a subluxation. Okay, so a dislocation is when you have a complete separation of a joint or of 2 bones that are supposed to be having contact with one another. Okay, so when there's no longer contact, or there's a discontinuity in 2 bones that form a joint, or the vertebrae, the bones of the back, that one lies on top of the other in a line, in a straight line, then that's a dislocation. A subluxation, however, is a minor, when that separation is incomplete, then you have a subluxation. There's still some contact, and it's not completely non-unioned or non-aligned. Okay, now the injury to the atlas, now under the skull, and the injury, let me just take it the way I put it. The injury is a result of a disruption of the stabilizing ligaments between the occiput, which is the base of the skull, and which is the occiput, and the base of the skull, and the C1 vertebra. The C1 vertebra is called the atlas. The very first bone under the head is the atlas. Under it is the axis. Okay. Now, the treatments for any you can see if there's any subluxation using a CT scan, and normally it's acute. The treatment is initial stabilization. You want to keep the head in position, because even though there is an incomplete displacement, but if it's not well controlled, or you move the body too quickly or in an appropriate manner, you can go from a subluxation to a complete dislocation, which is why people with spinal cord injuries, they're always very careful about how they injuries that could affect the spinal cord. I was very careful how you move that person, because you don't want to move the person in such a way that you could damage the spinal cord. Okay, so the most common mechanism of injury is the way that these kinds of injuries normally happen is when there's a high-speed motor vehicle accident. Like if you're driving a car, for instance, it's almost like a whiplash. Yeah, if you're driving a car, for instance, and that car is going straight ahead, and somehow the car rams into another car, there is an initial swing forward and then another swing backwards. That sudden movement forward and backwards could cause an irritation of the ligaments that hold the head in place, and could also cause a subluxation. So in this case, perhaps the blows that Quilla's head, that came in the direction of Quilla's head, and her body, the body movement and the head moving in a different direction, or perhaps the way she fell, or perhaps when she was slammed, all of this must have caused some trauma to the head and neck area and cause that subluxation to have taken place. Because if you look at this, look at the image of the head and neck area. Yeah, this is the base of the skull. This is what we call the occiput. Okay, this is your jaw. We're looking at this from the back now. Okay, this is from the back side of the image of the skull and the vertebra. So this is your occiput. This whole thing is a skull. This is the occiput. Now the very first bone that you see here, this is the atlas, and underneath the atlas you have the axis. Okay, so this is where it happens. Now the brain exits the skull into the vertebra through the vertebral column as the spinal cord. Now at the end of this brain in the head, there is something called the brain stem. Okay, the brain stem is somewhere here, coming out of the head and entering the neck area, descending like this as the spinal cord. So if this shifts, there could be an irritation of the brain stem and the spinal cord, where it actually continues as the spinal cord. So brain stem is very big on regulating the breathing. So anything that affects this area, so perhaps this is why she had the cardiopulmonary distress and she had difficulty breathing and she went into seizures, because of course if your brain is not getting adequate circulation, oxygen, there could be seizures. Maybe that could explain the seizures that she suffered. All right, so what for me, what is the take home? How do you define friendship? How do you define friendship? Because just like toxic intimate relationships, there are also toxic friends. And we have to know the difference between an acquaintance, a colleague, a neighbor, a childhood friend. You see how I put it specifically childhood? I mean someone from the past that you grew up with, and a life friend. We need to be careful about the titles that we give to people. Don't use the word friend. She's my friend, anyhow, and with whoever you meet. Do not give people titles that they have not earned. Friendship is a relationship between people who have mutual feelings of affection. Mind that word, mutual. Mutual feelings of affection, trust, and respect for each other. Be wise. Be wise. Be safe. Choose your friends wisely. My next video, we'll be looking at how to identify toxic friendships and how to put necessary boundaries in place. Remember, friendships is transitory. There are friends for different seasons and there are friends for different reasons. Be wise. Thank you very much for sticking with me till the end of this broadcast, and I'll talk to you again. Stay safe, stay blessed.